bugging or not? Could be, right?
Well, that quick though?
Really?
A mother spends 5 years calling for help inside her own home. 5 years of police showing up, writing reports, walking away. And then one Tuesday morning, in July, the calls stop because she's gone. Welcome back to Crime Lab Report. If you're new here, this is the place where we dig past the headlines and look at what the paperwork, the timelines, and the silence in a case actually tell us. If that sounds like your kind of investigation, hit subscribe, because today's case is one that's going to leave you with more questions than answers. Let's get into it. It's just before 11 in the morning on a quiet residential block in Far Rockaway, Queens, Nameoke Avenue. The kind of street where neighbors know each other, where nothing ever really happens. A 911 call comes in. Someone's been stabbed. Officers from the 101st Precinct arrive within minutes. What they find inside that home is a scene no one on that block will ever forget. A 61-year-old woman lying inside her own house with multiple stab wounds to her body. Emergency responders get there fast, but there's nothing they can do. She's pronounced dead right there, in the home she lived in. Her name is Joanne Crawford. She was a retired corrections officer. Think about that for a second. This is a woman who spent her career working inside some of the most dangerous environments you can imagine, keeping order among people the system had already given up on. She survived that. She made it out. She retired. And then she was killed in the one place that's supposed to be safe, her own living room. But here's where this case takes a turn that's going to sit with you, because the person police say did this wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a break-in. There was no forced entry. Nothing was stolen. This wasn't random. It was her son, Armel Crawford, 26 years old. Hours after his mother was found dead, police tracked him down and took him into custody. He's charged with murder and criminal possession of a weapon. A knife was recovered inside the home. And when he was arraigned in Queens Criminal Court, the judge didn't hesitate. No bail. He's being held, and he's due back in court in the coming days. Now, if this was just a case of a mother and son, a knife, and a tragic morning, it would already be heartbreaking enough. But when you start pulling back the layers on this one, that's when it gets disturbing. Because this wasn't the first time police had been to that house. This wasn't the first time. Not the second time. This was, by official count, at least the fourth time in 5 years that officers were called to that exact address to break up a fight between Armel and his mother. Let that sink in for a second. 5 years. Go back to August of 2021. Police respond to the home after neighbors or family reportedly witnessed Armel throwing hot water in the hallway during an argument. Think about that image. Boiling water in a hallway in the middle of a fight with his mother. That's not a normal disagreement. That's not two people raising their voices over the dishes. That's something else. And police were there. They saw it. They wrote it down. And then they left. Fast forward to November 2022. Another call, another argument between mother and son inside that same home. Officers respond again. Once again, no arrest, no charges. Then it goes quiet on paper for a while, until this year, April of 2026. Police are called back to Nameoke Avenue. This time, the argument reportedly started over an aunt who was staying at the house. A disagreement about a family member living under their roof escalates enough that someone calls the police. And then, just 1 month before Joanne Crawford was killed, in June, police are called one more time. This time, a domestic incident report is filed. Armel is accused of harassing his own mother. Harassment, on paper, documented, in the system. So here's the question I want you to sit with, because it's the question at the center of this entire case. How many times does someone have to call the police on their own child before something changes? 4 documented incidents, 5 years, hot water thrown in a hallway, repeated arguments serious enough for neighbors or family to dial 911, a formal harassment report just weeks before the killing. And yet, despite all of that, Armel Crawford had no prior arrests. Not one. Every single call ended the same way. Officers show up, things calm down, and everyone goes back inside that house like nothing happened. Until the one time it didn't calm down. So I want you to ask yourself something. What actually changes between a domestic incident report in June and a homicide in July? Because on paper, nothing did. There's no new charge between those two dates. No restraining order that we know of, no court date, no intervention. Just a report filed and then a month of silence before everything ended. That's the part of this case that I keep coming back to, because we talk a lot on this channel about warning signs, about the moments before tragedy where, looking back, everyone can point and say, there it is, that's where it could have been stopped. This case has 4 of those moments, officially documented on record by NYPD's own account, and still nothing stopped it. So let's talk about what we actually know happened that morning, because the details matter here. It's Tuesday, July 7th. Around 10:45 in the morning, not the middle of the night, not some hidden, secretive hour. Mid-morning, on a residential street, in broad daylight, a 911 call comes in reporting a person stabbed inside the home on Nameoke Avenue, near Pinson Street. Officers arrive and find Joanne Crawford with multiple stab wounds to her body. Not one wound. Multiple. That detail matters because investigators and prosecutors often look at the number and nature of wounds when they're trying to understand the intensity, the duration, of an attack. This wasn't a single strike in a moment of panic. This was sustained. The murder weapon, a knife, is recovered at the scene, inside the home, which tells us this wasn't planned days in advance with an outside weapon brought in. Whatever happened in that house that morning, it happened with what was already there. And here's something police have confirmed but haven't explained. There was no break-in. Nothing indicates forced entry. Sources say the incident was domestic in nature, which lines up with everything we just walked through. This wasn't a home invasion. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was 2 people, inside a house they shared, and only one of them walked out. Now, here's where the story gets even murkier, because a lot of the basic facts we'd normally expect to have by now, we don't. NYPD has not said how or where Armel was located and taken into custody after his mother was found. Was he still in the home? Did he leave? Did he turn himself in, or did officers track him down somewhere else in the city? That detail hasn't been released. And it matters, because it tells us something about his state of mind in those hours immediately after. Someone who stays at the scene behaves very differently than someone who runs. We also don't know what specifically triggered the confrontation that morning. 4 prior incidents give us a pattern, sure. Arguments over house guests, harassment complaints, a history of conflict, but none of that automatically explains why July 7th was the day it turned fatal. What was said? What escalated? Whether this was sudden, or whether it had been building for hours or days. Right now, that's a blank space in the case file, and it's one of the biggest open questions we have. And then there's the question that honestly I think is the hardest one to sit with. Does Armel Crawford have any documented mental health history? Because when you look at a pattern like this, repeated conflict, escalating behavior, a formal harassment accusation just weeks before a killing, a lot of true crime cases with this shape end up revealing an untreated mental health crisis somewhere underneath. I'm not saying that's what happened here. We don't know that. Nobody's confirmed that. But it's the kind of question investigators, and frankly, families in situations like this, need answered. And so far, there's nothing on record addressing it. Here's another thing worth sitting with. Joanne Crawford was a retired corrections officer. Someone who spent a career around risk assessment, around de-escalation, around reading dangerous situations before they turned violent. If anyone might have recognized warning signs in her own home, it's someone with that professional background. And yet, none of that training could change what happened inside her own walls. That's not a criticism of her. It's almost the opposite. It shows you how domestic violence doesn't care what your resume says. It doesn't care what you've survived professionally. Inside your own home, with your own child, the dynamics are different. The instincts you built for a job don't always translate to a relationship you love. So where does this leave us right now? Armel Crawford is being held without bail, charged with second-degree murder and criminal possession of a weapon. His case is moving through Queens Criminal Court, and we're going to be watching that closely because an arraignment is just the beginning. The real questions, the ones about intent, about mental state, about what actually happened behind that door, those get answered later, if they get answered at all. And I want to ask you something, because this is where I want to hear from you. When you've got 4 documented police visits to one address over 5 years, At what point does the system owe that family more than just a report and a drive away? Is this a story about one person's actions in one terrible moment? Or is this a story about years of missed chances, sitting quietly in a filing system until it was too late to matter? There's one more piece of this case I haven't brought up yet, and it might be the most unsettling detail in the entire timeline. Think about the aunt. Remember that April incident, the one where police were called because of an argument over a family member staying at the house? That detail tells us something important. This wasn't a home where only 2 people lived in isolation. There were other family members in and out of that space, which means there were likely other people who saw the tension building, other people who heard the arguments, other people who maybe even worried about what might happen one day. And that raises a question that true crime cases like this almost always circle back to. Did anyone in that extended family ever try to intervene outside of calling 911? Did anyone ever suggest Joanne stay somewhere else, even for a little while? Did anyone ever sit Armel down and try to get him help? We don't know. No bodies come forward publicly. No statements from relatives. No comments from neighbors. No vigils reported. For a case with this much documented history behind it, the silence from the people who actually knew this family is almost as loud as the case file itself. And that silence is worth sitting with for a second, because it tells us this case is still very early. We are watching this one unfold in real time, not looking back at it with the benefit of hindsight and closure. There's no trial date yet. No plea has been entered. No family spokesperson has stepped forward to tell Joanne's story in her own words through the people who loved her. So let's bring this back to the timeline one more time, because I think it's the thing that makes this case so important to talk about. 2021, hot water thrown in a hallway during a fight. 2022, another argument, another call, another walk away. April of this year, a dispute over family living arrangements. June, a formal harassment complaint, on paper official. July 7th, Joanne Crawford is dead, stabbed multiple times inside her own home. 4 chances, 4 moments where the system had eyes on this relationship, and 4 moments where nothing changed. That's not a hidden pattern that only makes sense in hindsight. That's a documented, official, on the record pattern that existed the entire time. And that's the uncomfortable truth at the heart of this case. It's not really a mystery about who did it. Police say they have their answer. It's a mystery about why nobody stopped it before it got to this point. And that question doesn't just belong to this family. It belongs to every family living through years of quiet, escalating conflict behind closed doors, hoping that someone, somewhere, notices before it's too late. Armel Crawford is due back in Queens criminal court in the coming days. When that happens, we're going to be here, walking you through it, piece by piece, the same way we always do. Because cases like this don't end with an arraignment. They end with a trial, with a verdict, and with a family left to make sense of a loss that was, by every official record, years in the making. If you made it this far, I want to know what you think. Was this a case where one person snapped in one terrible moment? Or was this a slow-burning tragedy that 4 separate police visits should have prevented? Type your answer in the comments. I read all of them, and some of you always catch details I miss. And if you're new to this channel, this is exactly the kind of case we cover here. Real cases, real timelines, real questions, no sensationalizing, just the facts laid out so you can form your own opinion. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because the moment there's an update in this case, whether that's a plea, a new court date, or new details about what happened inside that home on Nameoke Avenue, you will be the first to know. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I read every single one of them. We track these cases as they move through the courts, and we will absolutely be back with updates the moment Armel Crawford is back in front of that judge. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.